How do you stay resilient with what you are doing? All right, today I just spent a whole day with my coaches talking about how do you maintain and inspire resilience. And I think the most important topics I can share briefly, what I shared with them, is first, when you have a setback or a failure, the first important thing that you start managing, monitoring, is your self-talk to yourself about how you are processing that failure, that setback. And you've got immediately, when you have a failure, a setback, a challenge point, something horrible, you immediately, instead of being discouraged, disappointed, angry, hatred, immediately flip into your learning mind and say, okay, what did I learn about this? What did I learn about myself? What did I learn about other people? What did I learn about the world? And what might I do next time to improve the situation, prevent the situation, or do better? Because by projecting yourself into the next time based on the lessons you learned, you will move through that setback earlier. Because what does everyone else do? Usually, they revisit the setback and they ruminate on it, right? They keep thinking about it over and over. They think about all the reasons it went wrong, all the problems. Oh my God, 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 oh my God. And they watch their motivation wind down. Instead, be a student. Every time there's a failure, I'm like, what did we learn? And I very closely manage my self-talk. I'm asking, what am I saying to myself about myself after that failure? Because one part of me wants to go, Brendon, you big dummy. How could you let this happen again? You always fail. You suck. You knew this was going to happen. Look at you, still being stupid, still being a loser. OMG. And of course I could do that. But if I hear that, I'm like, that is completely not productive. Instead, I tap into the Brendon and says, hey, Brendon, you're a student, right? You're in this personal development stuff because you're curious about yourself. You're curious about living a good life. So what'd you learn? Go ahead, Brendon. Explain it to me, buddy. What did you learn about yourself during this? Aha. And what did you learn about other people in this? Mm-hmm. And what did you learn about the opportunity or the context of the world? Aha. Now, Brendon, what are you going to do next time? And that simple self-talk starts moving me into the future, and that makes me buoyant and excited and, yeah, you heard it first, motivated. Because when I think about how to do it better next time, that motivates me versus being discouraged by thinking about how it happened last time. Think about next time, motivated, last time, discouraged. So approach it from the learning mindset, manage self-talk. The key to resilience is what you are saying to yourself and how you are labeling yourself, other people, and the context. If the context, you're like, well, that real estate thing or that investment or that promotion or that marketing don't work, never does, ain't gonna work for me because I'm stupid and other people are better than me. Well, no wonder the Doritos, Diet Coke, and Netflix thing keeps happening. Right? You're talking yourself into doing nothing. I want you to talk yourself into the learning and the motivation for next time. That is the absolute key to resilience. The second aspect of resilience is very similar to discipline, which is all I want you to do is connect with somebody else and process it with them. When you suffer in silence, the suffering lasts longer. When you express and share your suffering with other people, you tend to get comfort, you tend to get understanding, compassion, and you're able to forgive yourself and move through it more quickly. That is why you need to be in a good community of people. And I know not all of you are in my mastermind. Not all of you are at our events. Not all of you are in the social community here because maybe this is your first time with us. But I'm cheering you on from afar. I'm here for you. I love you. You have support in this world. Never forget it. Never forget it. And if you're like, but I don't have anybody. I'm like, listen, easy answer. All I want you to do, please go volunteer for some organizations in your local community. And as you get a volunteer community around you, when you're struggling, now you can call up your fellow volunteer, another person, or tell them out while you're volunteering, like, yeah, I've been having a bad week, or yeah, this happened in my marriage, or yeah, I got the medical report, and, if you have no one to share anything with, no wonder you suffer. But don't forget that there's 7 billion people in the world, and there's no reason anybody watching this doesn't have a positive supportive group. If you don't have a positive supportive group, you can't blame where you're from, you can't blame your city, you can't blame your company, you can't blame your team, can't blame anything else. You need to go build that active community where that's, again, come and do our events, or it's for you joining a local group, whether it's for you volunteering, whether it's for you reaching out online. There are always options for you, but it's really like we can all be warriors, right? But I always tell people, you need to understand that warriors have other comrades. Like, if none of the great battles on earth were fought without an army. You need to develop your army and stop thinking of yourself as an army by yourself, right? That's not how it works. You need comrades, partners, friends, family, friends. So you got to develop deep connections and relationships, be around great people. And if you ever struggle with that, I always tell people the greatest support network you can ever get for free is joining local volunteer organizations. And because the people who volunteer in your community tend to be the most compassionate, thoughtful, progressive, intelligent people who also have realized life is about service to others. So they're dedicating their time and energy to that. Who happens to be on the boards of the most successful nonprofits in town? The most successful people in town. So automatically you're leveling up your peer group by volunteering, because the people who run the local nonprofits, or the people who donate the most and contribute the most, tend to be the most successful, and you're leveling up your peer group. And when you level up the people who you are around, they've dealt with challenges just like you. And it's easier for them to support you, cheer you on, guide you through that setback because they've been through it. And when you have a social support, the resilience is so much easier. Okay. The other aspect about resilience I'd like to share with you today, to develop a lot of resilience, is remember, you're going to think about what you learned, think about how you're labeling yourself and talking to yourself, and orient yourself to the future. You're also going to surround yourself with good people. The other aspect about resilience is this: make sure you maintain your discipline for previous commitments to self. Maintain your discipline to maintain your resilience. What does that mean? Have you ever had a setback where something failed and something goes wrong and you just throw out everything? You like throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? You had a setback in your career, and you had a horrible day at work. And the next day when you're supposed to work out, you throw that out, right? You're supposed to go volunteer, you throw that out. You're supposed to meet your friend, you throw that. You let one setback throw out and destroy everything else. It's like one domino falls, you let it fall into everything else. So all your other habits you fall off of, and now you're in a deeper pit of despair. So I always tell people, listen, for me as an example, when I have a bad work day, I make sure I get that workout the next morning. If somebody in a relationship lies, cheats, steals, is terrible in partner or business or whatever, I'm like, okay, well then I better make sure. I said tomorrow at 3, I'm going to write. Meaning when one thing falls, that's the time to stick with diligence and discipline to the other things that are certain. Because what people do is they have a bad day, and then they knock down all the dominoes of goodness in their life, and now they're in despair. So I'm here to tell you, it's really important when you do struggle and fail at something to make sure you keep your other commitments. Yes, you had a bad day, but don't cancel all the other meetings you had set up to move your life forward the next 3 days. Because that's what people do. I don't feel like it now, I'm mad. And they cancel all the good that they were going to do. And now they're by themselves, having no momentum. They have no momentum, so they lack motivation to get back up.
This is that time of year people are thinking about their relationships, and one of the most common questions we get asked is, Brendon, how do we set more boundaries in our relationships? Someone takes advantage of our time, our energy, our effort, our money, whatever it is, and we get upset about that. So how can we prevent that? Now, I'm going to speak today specifically about setting healthy boundaries in healthy relationships. Right? So your lover, your partner, your spouse, that person you're kissing on, how do you set some good relationship boundaries there? Okay, let's get into it. 4 big ideas. Number 1, most important, say it early. Don't wait to say it. What I mean by that is if you know what your boundaries are, don't let them crash into it and mess up before you say it. And what happens for most people, because they don't know their boundaries, they just flip off at somebody, right? Someone does something, they get all mad at them. They're like, what's wrong with you? And they don't realize the other person's clueless. No one will ever know your boundaries until you explicitly say, hey, this is a boundary for me. Let me say that again. No one will ever know it. Here's what happens, especially when people are new or young in a relationship, they try to set little hints. You know, someone does, their man does something, they're like, oh, honey, I wish you wouldn't do that. And they're like, that's all they say. That is not enough, okay? Men, by the way, are thick in the head. They need explicit, direct communication. If you set little hints or little traps, they're not gonna figure it out, ever. Not 5 years in the marriage, not 10 years. Boundaries need explicit communication. You need to say, hey, you know what? This is a real boundary for me. I'm not able to do that. I don't like that. This thing is really important to me. If you don't explicitly say it, they will never understand it or try to respect it. So if you got someone who's disrespecting you or not understanding you, is it because you haven't been explicit with them yet? At least start there. Trust me, start there. So maybe sit down and go, okay, think about the person you're in love with right now and say, okay, what are my real boundaries? What don't I want to talk about? What don't I like that they do? What do I not want to compromise again on? Where do I not want to feel like I'm too vulnerable? Or where do I want to open up? Like, you need to know your boundaries. And if you don't ever expect them to, and never get mad at them when they bounce into it. The most important thing, this is number 2, never get upset when someone bounces into your boundary, ever. When someone bounces into it, either A, they don't know it, or B, they're just kind of going through the motions in their own life. Look, they're not thinking about your boundaries. This is really important. No one is thinking about your boundaries. And so when they bounce into it, don't get mad. It's a useless emotion to get angry when somebody does that, because remember, like, would you get mad at an oblivious child? Well, most adults are obliviously going through their day automatically, and when you're going through your life automatically without full adult vibrancy and presence, you're gonna do some dumb stuff. So don't get mad. Just once it happens, again, turn back to explicit. Hey, I'd really like this. Could you pay attention to that? I would also say one reason you should never get mad is, do you know theirs? What are their boundaries? Do you know their boundaries that make them too vulnerable? Like if you go there, do you know their boundaries of what makes them upset? Have you asked the questions to try and figure out what they want, what they desire, what they need? Or are you just thinking about your own space? Now I know, and I'm not trying to judge you because I don't know your story. I'm talking about, this happens for a lot of people. They make the mistake of wanting so much for people to respect them without understanding others or giving others respect. Because it's very easy to get selfish in relationships, especially if you've been hurt. I understand that. But sometimes when we've been hurt, we want to set up a boundary to make everybody fall in line with us without understanding them, and that's trouble. And that's why I want to lead to this next point, which is really important. Set boundaries that help your relationship, not just you. I mean, you have to think of the boundary is no longer you, and the boundary is no longer them. The boundary is the two of you together. So it's a different boundary. You need to open up your boundaries to the relationship. That means you need to change your personal preferences and pet peeves and everything else and open it to realize they got theirs too. Your boundaries as a couple should always be expanding between the two of you. Your trust should expand between the two of you. Your love should expand between the two of you. Your faith in each other and confidence in each other, that should expand between the two of you. Meaning boundaries are never set. In a relationship, you should be pushing them. Be more vulnerable on your 5th date than you were on your 1st date, than you were on your 1st year versus your 6th year. Like, continue to grow and open up that boundary. It's so important. But realize, if all the boundaries you have are to protect yourself, you're not setting boundaries for the relationship. You're just being a single person in a silo in a relationship. Real relationships have boundaries for themselves. What do I mean by that? You protect your time with your spouse, your lover, your partner, as much as you try to protect your time against them or against others. You protect the respect that the two of you have. When people try to poke holes at your lover and they criticize them, you don't allow that. You don't speak ill of the person that you're in love with. You know, if you're in love with them, that relationship is healthy. Look, if they're abusive or they're doing something bad, tell lots of people and get the heck out of that, get out of that situation. But if you are in love and this is a good relationship, listen. It's important that you respect the relationship boundaries, that you don't speak ill or bad of the other person, that you don't take pot shots at them, that you respect the two of you together as important as your preferences, as important as their preferences, as important as your career, as important as their career, that the relationship itself deserves protection and your boundary around it, to love on it and to protect it. Your job is to protect the relationship more than protecting your ego. Does that make sense? So expand your own definition of boundaries, and that will lead you in this last piece, which you actually really like, which is how can you now let go of all these boundaries you've set up? Like, there's a freedom in relationship after a period of time where the boundaries have been knocked down more, where you're allowing people in more. I tell people all the time, I say, you really want to set boundaries in life? Be more loving. It'll push the boundaries away, right? You want to set more boundaries in life? Be more loving, because the bigger those boundaries get, the more they become useless. Like, why are you trying to protect yourself so much? Think about that. After a period of time in a relationship, why try to protect yourself so much? Open up again. Open up those boundaries. Now, again, if you're in a relationship where there's abuse, mental, physical, emotional abuse, then your job needs to be exit, period. Your job isn't change the other person. Your job, exit. Set the boundary, exit. That's the answer, period. If you're in an abusive relationship, go, right? Go get served. There's plenty of services in your local communities. Get support, ask for your friends, but get out of that relationship, because the abuse they're not going to suddenly remember not to be abusive. That's where they're at, and you can't change it. So set that boundary clear and clean. But if you're in a positive relationship, love more in that relationship, be more vulnerable, let that thing come open. Now, obviously, you can tell I'm just answering your questions here, and I'm going off the top of my head, but I hope it serves you, because the reality is most people, they're trying to protect themselves too much in life because they got hurt. But I had to learn that lesson too. I had a terrible breakup when I was a young man that caused me and led me into depression and ultimately suicidal thoughts. And I did what we all do. I didn't want to get hurt anymore. So I built up boundaries. I put up walls. I put on a mask. Whatever metaphor you want to use, I was trying to keep out the bad people, but at that cost of letting in good people. So I always say, sometimes in our own boundaries, in our own efforts to protect ourselves, we block out the very things that we so desperately desire. So it might actually turn out in your life, you didn't need more boundaries, you need to let a few of them go. Be vulnerable, be open to the universe, be open to your spouse, your lover, your partner again, and you'll feel a different kind of energy enter that relationship that you will sense is a big part of the charged life. All right, let's rock and roll. 5 steps to having more confidence in your life. Number 1, decide you need no reason whatsoever to be more confident. Just make the decision to be confident. You don't need a reason. You don't need 50 people to tell you you're amazing or you're beautiful or we love you. You just have to say, you know what, today I'm gonna lift my head up a little bit. You know, today I'm gonna give myself a little bit of credit. Today I'm just gonna be confident. I'm gonna walk into this room, I'm gonna stand tall as if I were an incredibly confident person for no other reason than that's my intention right now. That's it. That's the power of intention. It's the power of the self-directed human being that we just get to choose how we want to feel. You could be happy right now for no reason, right? For no reason at all. You could just say, you know what? I'm deciding to be happy in my life. You don't need 50 things to make you happy. Just sense the moment, feel grateful for life. You're good to go, right? We overcomplicate these things. We think we have to have, some big, long psychological story and build up to suddenly one day wake up and be more confident. No, we don't. We have to wake up one more day and say, today, I'm gonna be confident. Just like we decide when we wake up, you ever had a day where you just crushed it? You know, you got so much done, you were like, wow. At the end of the day, you're like, man, I just crushed it today. That happened because when you woke up in the morning, you said, I'm gonna get some stuff done today. You had the intention to be a productive human being that day. So why not set the intention to be a confident human being that day? Why not set the intention to be a loving person, or an ambitious person, or a fun person, or a flirty person, or a sexy person, or whatever kind of person that you want to be? Just decide. You don't need a bunch of stuff. People really get this one wrong. And what happens is, if you don't have the intention in the moment to say, I'm gonna be confident, I'm just gonna allow that to come up, I'm gonna feel that sense and feeling what confidence is for me and express that genuinely and real for myself, in the vacuum of intention arises impulse. And often from that impulse, through our brainstem, up comes worry, concern, fear, the paying attention to what is wrong so that we can fix it or flee or escape, right? So we have to have the intention of who we are and what we're going to be. It begins with you simply deciding to be a confident person. Changed my life when I did that. I realized, and this was way back in college for me, I just thought, I want to be a confident person. How's that going to happen? Do I have to wait till I'm 50 after I've achieved everything? I've made some money, or maybe people like me somewhere? Come on, get over it. We should get over our stuff and one day just realize real confidence is simply having the ability to genuinely express who we truly are and to pursue things that we truly desire. That's confidence. Confidence doesn't have to mean you're leaping over tall buildings. Confidence means you're being who you are, authentically, for no other reason. No one gave you permission. You just decided to be who you are. You decided to chase your dreams. That's confidence, right? Believing in yourself and believing in where you're going, that's confidence. It doesn't take a whole lot of magic. That's confidence. From that decision to be confident just because we want to feel that sense of strength in our own bodies, that sense of energy and joy of expressing who we are and chasing what we want, everything rolls from there. You know, the human develops in its psyche. We develop a real sense of competence or confidence coming from a sense of integrity for ourselves. You know, integrity is, I know who I am and I am being that consistently. I know what I want and I am chasing that consistently. Integrity, being aligned with who you are, your values, your beliefs, and your dreams, having integrity, that gives us confidence in self, right? That our self can stand on its own and be itself and do what it desires. That gives us a sense of confidence. So how have you been doing that department? Have you been really demonstrating who you are to the world? Have you allowed yourself to do that? Because if you do that over a period of time, the self, and I would argue the soul, senses a coherence. You know, there's a cohesive sense of identity that comes from being consistent to the best of who we are. Confidence comes from that. And that too is will. It is decision. It is a desire to want to be a person of integrity and confidence. And that's where it stems from. I think if you decide to be confident, you have integrity in who you are being and what it is you're seeking in life and your values. I think the third one from there, it really comes down to competency. And I mentioned that word earlier, competency, which means, you know, psychologists often call it the confidence-competence loop. As you become more competent in something, you learn how to do it, you're more confident in doing it. As you learned how to ride a bike and you rode the bike more and more and more, you became more skilled at it, you developed more confidence in your ability to ride the bike. Any area of your life you're gonna go into for the first time, be okay with being uncertain. Be okay with being uncomfortable. Be okay with not knowing how it's gonna turn out, because it's your first time. But stumble into it anyway, because as you stumble into it, you develop skill, you develop comfort with it. And then suddenly one day you wake up and say, I'm pretty confident doing this. Nothing changed in who you are. What changed is your level of competency, knowledge, skill, and ability. That's what competency is, knowledge, skill, ability, and talent. And so when we finally realize, oh wow, I just need to learn a little bit more here, I'll be more confident. I just need to apply this a little bit more here, I'll be more confident. As you develop skills and abilities in your life, in your unique areas, you become more confident. to do that, it requires the fourth thing. And that fourth thing is momentum. You know, momentum is key to confidence. When we stop having any momentum in our life, we often feel lost or confused or down, you know. We start losing that connection with our strength and our self. And so we have to take more action to develop more confidence. That means we have to say, what is it I truly want, and start moving towards it on a consistent basis before we know the whole plan often. You know, a lot of people think that your decision is your destiny. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know about that. A lot of people decide to lose weight. A lot of people decide to be a loving spouse. A lot of people decide to do something good, but they don't. It's disciplined action that is your destiny, right? And often, some of the best decisions in your life come after you have momentum at something, and then you've gained some more perspective, right? But a lot of us are waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect time, the perfect person, the perfect thing to pursue our goals or our dreams. And it's that waiting that often dampens our confidence, because we're at the external, we're sort of at the whim of the world a little bit. Maybe we get lucky, maybe that person comes in, maybe the funding comes through, whatever it is. We have to instead say, what can I do to begin this? What can I do now to begin? Because even if you begin and you're not sure, you don't have to know the whole path, right? Sometimes the whole stairway is not illumined until you take that first step, as we learned from Martin Luther King, right? It's like, what is that first? Sometimes it's that first step, and then the staircase emerges. Then we can see. And so for yourself, as soon as you take that first step, that says in your mind, hey, you know what? I took a step. Good for me. And then you start making better and better decisions because you're able to see more. Often you don't know where you're going in life until you start jogging towards something. Right? Still just run in place, run somewhere. But as soon as you run, things open up to you. Say, oh, look at this. Look at this, look at this. People often say, I wish I had more vision for my life, Brendon. I say, it's hard to have vision for your life if you've never seen anything. Get outside of the house, turn off the TV, turn off the computer, go see the world a little bit. You'll gain a little bit more vision. And with more vision and momentum towards the things you want, you will have more confidence. So he begins with deciding, really, you need nothing to be more confident. But if you need something, go with integrity. Be more of who you truly are. Chase what you truly desire. Be smart enough to know that you have to develop more competency at the things that you're interested in. More competency, more confidence. You have to realize, oh my gosh, there is no reason in the world that you cannot yourself, with very simple moves, gain more momentum. More momentum, more progress, more confidence. And finally, the fifth thing of confidence, community. You know, we all need people around us who are supportive and positive and buoyant and who appreciate our sense of aliveness and joy and happiness in life. And if we don't have that, you can't sit there and be a victim. Oh, I just have a bad set of parents and I got a bad set of friends and I guess I'm destined to be around a bunch of nuts. No, go find a new peer group. Go to a seminar. Go to the church. Go to a volunteer meeting. Go get around people who are positive and who are amazing. You know, a lot of people tell you, hey, you know what? Just get rid of all those negative people. Well, sometimes your negative people in your life are your mom or your dad or your lover or your spouse or one of your kids is just a little tyrant. You know, you can't just open the door and say, get out of here, you little bastard. It doesn't work like that. It's not about cutting loose all the negative people, right? Of chopping off people and getting rid of them. Though maybe there are some people you need to say, I don't need to associate with this person as much in my life anymore. Or if I do, I don't need to get so hooked up and trapped into their pools of pessimism. What you have to do is say instead, okay, if I don't have the supportive peer group, let me go create that. Let me go find those people and get around them. Because as people are cheering you on, you gain more confidence. As people are saying, hey, you're doing a good job, you say, yeah, I am doing a good job. And you allow yourself to feel that sense of success and that sense of integrity when other people recognize it in you. Sometimes our greatest confidence is coming from having a community of supporters. And so you don't have to wait for those supporters to show up. Go find them, go mix, go mingle, get outside of the house, live life again. As you do that, as you live life again, what do you notice? More integrity, more momentum, more competency, more good people. And suddenly that thing you were hoping one day you found confidence, no, one day you wake up and you created it. The number one issue with being productive isn't that people usually don't know what to do with the day. It's that they look at it with dread and they accept that feeling and they stop. They go, I don't wanna. So they stop. Even though if they looked past the immediate dreadful activity and looked into the future about the benefits it would give them, if they could reconnect with that, they could push through. It's that when we get in the short term, just automatic feelings, automatic emotions that come up, those things, when they're not monitored consciously, and sometimes they're not overridden by a higher calling, a higher ambition to serve, a higher mission, then what ends up happening is we go, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll skip this one and, I'll get the workout in tomorrow, and then workout comes tomorrow, I'll get it in next Friday, and then it doesn't come in next Friday, and then I'll get the work in, the work doesn't happen, and we keep telling ourselves these stories, I'll do it when I feel like it. But I hope if one thing you've learned here is the power plant doesn't have energy, you need to generate the energy in which you need to excel and serve in this world. That's what I had to do last night. I had to generate the energy that I need to excel and serve on the stage. I had to make sure that today I felt my best. This is my marathon that I get to do 8 times a year. This is what I train for. This is what keeps me sharp. We all have to have those things in our business or our brands or the things that we're being productive towards that push us, that challenge us. If you don't have 3 or 4 of those each year that are your form of business or productivity marathons, build them back in. Build in challenging expressions for yourself each year. Build them in. We all need our own marathon each year, whether that's a true running marathon or for me, this is it for me. And I got 8 of these a year that I build in that make me sharp. I don't need to do them. The better use of my time would just be doing more videos on the internets, more social media. But this pushes me. This demands excellence from me. When we talk about productivity today, I'm going to say, what is the things that are scheduled for you that demand you be great? Because if you don't have any of those, you'll never be great. You'll just do what's comfortable and easy. You got to have those milestone moments throughout the year in your business. Sometimes that means, okay, that's 3 weeks. I'm going to write my book in that 3 weeks. And you're just gonna gear up for it and you're gonna crush it. Sometimes that means that's when you're gonna launch your thing. Okay, we're gonna gear up and launch that thing. Sometimes that means that's when you do your executive retreat. You pull away all the executives, you meet with them, and that week is just like fire week for you. That's not, I don't mean fire them, I mean fire, But you gotta have those scheduled, otherwise you just go into homeostasis. You just kind of go through the days and go through the motions, and nothing is compelling you to reach and stretch and push. And if you don't have that, I'm telling you, it is hard to live a fully charged life. So you got to approach productivity now in a completely different way. First rule, don't think of productivity as something that you're doing just in a block of time. Think of your life as being a productively fulfilling life. That productivity is not a time management thing, it's a purpose thing. I don't think of time management when I think of productivity, I think of purpose. I think of who do I want to be? What do I want to contribute? What will be fulfilling for me? Because if you don't have something bigger than just blocks of time, which are important, but there's not something that we together are going towards where it's this set of dreams, where there's personal meaning and there is social contribution, we won't go. And you might write that down. You need
both things as a mindset for productivity. Personal meaning, meaning you care about it, you like it, it's intrinsically valuable to you. You feel like me doing this is important because I like it, I enjoy it, it's important. That's personal meaning. The other aspect of productivity is social contribution. I have to see what I'm doing is going to matter to somebody. It's going to make a difference. And if we don't look at productivity that way, we'll just be like, it feels like a task. But if we can assign some meaning and social contribution to our tasks, everything can change. But ultimately, those things have to come together in something to be productive for. Like I'm like, what am I productive for? It took me a long time to figure that out for myself based on what I do. What am I productive for? Well, at the personal meaning ways, I'm productive because I want that vibrancy of being a creative human being. I want to be productive because I want to feel like I'm creating and expressing myself. That's the personal meaning for me. I also want to be a productive person because the social contribution. I want to feel that energy and that creativity, but I also want to feel like, you know what, my life mattered. Did I live? Did I love? Did I matter? Did I create some outputs? Did I create something or do something that helped somebody or moved the needle or made a difference or a contribution?
This is going to be one of those sessions where you go, got it. That the reason we do personal development, it's ultimately all about new ways of accessing self-awareness, isn't it? That when we hear new ideas in personal development, maybe just a slight change in how we think about something or how we think about ourselves, life can change. Just one little subtle shift in how we think about a topic, in how we approach something in our life. Those subtle shifts can make a big difference. And this topic today is that. We're talking about setting boundaries. I'm going to talk about how to think about this topic of boundaries. So we're going to be talking about on boundaries all day long. And I think you're going to be really amazed in the simple hour of how much you're going to cover and learn today in your own self-awareness in a way you probably haven't thought about boundaries before. Because what most people do when I say, the topic of setting boundaries, they immediately think of like, I need to set boundaries with my family. I need to set boundaries with this jerk in my life. I need to set boundaries with, by the way, we'll talk about those things, but I'm going to elevate the conversation for you. If you'll forgive me, go a little more advanced on this topic, because I think that's the power of GrowthDay. It's not only just hearing the common sense things, but maybe hearing a little more advanced approach to these topics. And I think that is the promise of today. So thank you for being here. Let's do some personal development work. We're talking about boundaries today. And here's how I'm going to start with this. The most important boundaries you're ever going to set in your life are with yourself and what is acceptable with who you are, what is acceptable in how you conduct yourself. A boundary between the good self and the not so good self. A boundary between the higher level of who you are versus the lower impulses. A boundary in your own sense of what is right and wrong and what you allow yourself. In other words, we're going to go into the conversation of standards that we allow in ourselves and in our lives. And I think when you think about a boundary, not just something between you and another person, but in your own mindset about what is allowed or not allowed, I think this could be a game-changing conversation today. And I'm going to jump right into it because I don't want to speak conceptually for you here. So let me talk about some important boundaries in your life. I'll talk about 3 huge internal boundaries. Then we'll talk about the standards that we allow in our life that may be really hurting us or accelerating us. First one, I think you guys are going to love this. So you can grab a screen grab. I wish I was prettier with my fancy camera, but here we go. I think you're going to like this one. The boundary of the fake self versus the real self. Take that screen grab. You got to get this. See, this boundary and what you allow here and how you conduct yourself here, it matters, doesn't it? When I talk about setting boundaries, very few people ever think about this one. Because when we talk about setting boundaries, we often feel victim to something. We feel like, oh, well, someone's encroaching on my boundaries. We'll talk about that. But this is the one that causes the real damage. When we blur the lines between who we authentically really are and how we are showing up to please or placate others, to minimize ourselves. That's the boundary. How much do you cross this boundary? You want to talk about the quality of your life? How much do you cross this boundary right here? Think about this. How much, how often do you cross this boundary? That can be the game changer in your life today. When you become aware of these two selves that we all have, the authentic, the authentic, the real, the vibrant self versus the face, the facade, the person we try to be for others, it's not really us. When we step outside of ourselves into a persona of somebody else to please others, to fit in, to belong, to get love, this is the ultimate boundary that breaks our own integrity. This is the boundary that makes us miserable. And you have to decide at some point in your personal development that you don't cross this boundary as much anymore. And at someday, not at all. And that is the ultimate work of personal development, isn't it? How easy it is to glide into conformity, to go from who we really are to suddenly acting out of character. I really believe breaking this boundary leads to most of the long-term miseries in our life. Let me say it again. Breaking this boundary leads to most of the long-term miseries in our life. When we aren't honest about our real thoughts, feelings, desires, dreams, hopes, aspirations, and instead we show up just to please others and to fit in, we minimize ourselves. We enlarge the falsehoods in our life. And see, there is this thing of a boundary, right? There's a boundary between true and false, fake and real, authentic and inauthentic. I know we all might use different languages. I'm very aware that this is an international audience. I just think you've got to figure that out and get highly attuned to when that is happening. When people talk about mindfulness, they're often talking about, ooh, look at the flowers over there. Let me notice the sensations in my body. When they talk about mindfulness, they often think of, let me just drink in this moment. But the most critical and important part of mindfulness is to know who you are and who you are being in any given moment. Because I know a lot of people, they can appreciate the flowers all day long, but they're miserable because they're not being themselves. Listen, write this down. Boundaries are all about identity. Boundaries. The most important boundary you will ever set in your life is, who are you? What's in that circle of who you are? And what's outside of that? Who are you? Who are you not? In other words, just bringing back my little picture here, the fake self versus the real self. That's the ultimate boundary, to be mindful of when I cross that. Oh, it's so important. I know a lot of you out there, you're influencers, you're creators, you're leaders, you're caregivers, you know, and you can recognize how often you have to step into a role maybe you don't want to be in, or maybe you're in a situation where you have to hold back a little of your own truth for decorum. You have to put on a shiny face and not freak out on your child. You have to calm yourself down because you want to scream at somebody. That's self-regulation. That's okay. That's allowed. We have to do those things. What we are talking about is an enduring sense, an enduring recognition or mindfulness of how often we are crossing these boundaries. This is a conversation of frequency, isn't it? Because sometimes we have to do a certain behavior that's appropriate. We're going to talk about that later. Right now, I want to shift your whole brain. Oh my God, setting boundaries in my life is all about who am I? Who am I really? And am I showing up as that consistently, with intention, with joy, with flow? That is the thing we are actually talking about, not just boundaries about, what you'll allow on your plate from others. It's about who you are. The more often you break this boundary, the more miserable you are. I really want you to capture that. I know you're kind of like, geez, Brendon, thanks for the personal development today. Can we get some dancing bears and balloons? Make this a little more entertaining, dude. This is a little hard, but this is why you might be miserable. And I don't say that in any judgmental way. I've been there and I've coached thousands of people through this. We got to get you more on this side. We've got to be aware when we break a boundary, who we are not. Very key. You want to change your life, you also become vitally aware of this other internal boundary. And this is this one. Your old self versus your new self. You got to know what happens is you have these patterns or these habits, these ways of thinking that were shaped by others. You have this old identity and you have the new you, who you are today as a conscious, intentional, living adult, right? This is when you drop into your childhood fears and concerns. And this is when you are in the moment as an authentic, conscious adult, right? I know not everyone loves this language, but I think it's important. And I've had to say this, listen, just for context, I know so many people are new into GrowthDay here, but I've been coaching people one-on-one for 16 years of my life, 16 years. I've worked with people from all walks of life, 100+ countries. I've had the blessing of so many millions of people going through our programs and getting immediate feedback, but also I do this one-on-one with people for 16 years. And sometimes as a high performance coach, I have to push a little bit. I always say I'm paid to push. I have to sometimes jar people or help them see themselves or recognize something. And so I know not everyone will like this language that I'll use, but sometimes I'll say with a client directly to them, I say, is that the high school self or is that you as a leader? And what I'm helping them recognize is this versus this. There is an old part of you or old set of patterns or habits or beliefs that you have to be aware that might not serve you, and they cannot break the boundary into the now. Who knows what I'm talking about? Anyone? Does this resonate with anyone? I see. Okay, good. You got to know when that boundary is broken. Oh, my high school self just walked up into this room and smacked everybody in the face. You got to know. You got to know when you lose it. You got to know when that childish, smaller, older, less competent, less secure you shows up in the moment, breaks the boundaries of time. The time zone boundary just got broke, right? Time zones are a boundary of time, aren't they? That's what a time zone is. It's a boundary of time. And sometimes we allow that boundary to be broke with old thoughts, old beliefs, old insecurities, old selves that do not belong in this moment. And so I know not everyone likes it when I call you or call a client high school, because that's not really that kind, because I knew a lot of kids in high school who were wise and centered and incredibly remarkable and spontaneous and creative and giving. That wasn't me. Just letting I just want to let you know, people. Okay. So when I say it, what I mean is that childish, dramatic, overly selfish, repugnant, like little high school kid that got all worked up and angry and had no emotional regulation, no connection with intention and vision. So maybe it's not appropriate to say that. I'm trying to give it to you as a metaphor, though. Is there, and that's why I like this language, is there an old you that shows up once in a while and breaks the boundary into the now? If so, when does that happen? Let me share with you one of the most important concepts in setting boundaries is to recognize when that happens. Same thing with this one. When do these breaks happen? What's the pattern there? Is it when you're under pressure? Is it when you're feeling defensive? Is it when someone judges you? Is it when someone doesn't comply? Is it when they insult you? Is it when you fail? Is it when you're feeling discouraged? Right? We all know this. It happens in our lives, right? Imagine the truth of how many of you have ever been on a diet or a new health program and you're like, I'm building a new self. I'm going to get pretty. I'm going to get, in better shape. I'm going to do all these things. And then you have a bad day and you're 3 seasons into some Netflix show and you've murdered like 17 bags of chips and popcorn and 2 bottles of wine. You're like, oh my God. Well, something happened to make you break that boundary of the new self and the old self, isn't it? An old pattern of conditioning came back in and you went to a creature comfort versus a higher intention. You went to a creature comfort instead of a higher intention. You knocked out that conscious, willing, forward-looking part of you, and you went into coping zone, and you might have went into an old coping zone. I got to know my old coping zones versus my new coping zones. The way I used to cope might not be appropriate in this relationship, in this career, in this role, with this person. Are you guys geeking about this? I love personal development for this conversation. It's a new way of looking at things sometime and go, oh, yeah, man, I never thought about a boundary as something internally that I'm breaking between old self and new self, fake self and real self, and dialing when that happens. This is why I really want to encourage every single one of you. Please, please, please make sure you're going into your GrowthDay app and using the journal to capture what's going on in each of your days, to capture your feelings, to capture when you break a boundary, to capture how you wish you would have shown up, led, performed, interacted, or communicated. Your journal is the most important part of GrowthDay in my perspective, because the break that you might be getting here, you get that every day when you reflect about yourself and you see, when did that happen? When did I go backwards? When did I break the time zone here of old self, new self? What caused me to cope that old way versus this way? It's in thinking about it that we discover ourselves. It's in self-reflection that we discover our future self. It's in self-reflection that we discover our future self. This is the power of journaling.
People ask me, Brendon, how do you deal with stressful situations so you don't freak out or have a ton of anxiety and fear leading up to them? Because maybe you have a big public speaking engagement coming up, or maybe you have that test at school coming up, or maybe you're about to have that difficult conversation with somebody that you wanted to say something to them, but you've been holding back and you know it's gonna freak you out when you go to tell them the truth. Whenever we're in situations that we know are going to bring us stress, it really is on us to prepare our absolute best so that A, we deal with them well and we can actually enjoy the experience or go through the experience without freaking out. But B, we don't freak out the energy of everybody else, right? Because in all of the storms of life, it is our job to be the calm amid the storm. But that's hard, and that takes skills, and that takes training. So I got 4 big ideas for you in this Brendon Show episode. Number 1, always anticipate and ask others how to deal with stressful situations. I know that's a no-duh one, but most people do not do that, right? You're about to go take your first SAT test ever. What do? Well, you study, you go and you take it. But that's gonna be a stressful situation. Why wouldn't you first anticipate, wow, that is gonna cause a lot of anxiety for me. The days before, the day of, I'm gonna be freaking out, waiting for my scores. Why would you not ask people who've already taken it? What did you do the day before the test to calm yourself down, to get yourself ready? The day of the test, what did you do? When you went in there, did you have a certain breathing pattern? How did you calm yourself down? What did you tell yourself so that you could deal with the situation? Right? Same thing. You're about to go have a difficult conversation with your spouse or your partner, the person you love. Why wouldn't you ask other people who you know, be like, hey, I'm about to have this difficult conversation. Have you ever had a conversation like that? Oh, what did you say? How did you bring it up? Like the idea that so many people in this world go into every day bumbling into it, I feel sad for them. They're living a highly reactive life and they're setting themselves up for incredible failure. Because if you don't anticipate the emotions that you're going to have in stressful situations, I promise the situation is gonna win, not you. So always anticipate, okay, this is gonna be hard. This conversation, this test, this day, this thing, it's going to be hard. Anticipate, it will be hard. Now, who has gone through it before, who I can ask how they dealt with it? That's the first strategy. Second strategy, I need you to make a pre, during, and post stress management plan. Huge phrase, Brendon, I know. But what I think is, okay, if I'm gonna go have that difficult experience in my life, I'm gonna plan, really plan, the day before, the day of, and the day after. I'm really gonna think through it. So let's say you're gonna have that difficult conversation with somebody you love. Okay, the day before, I'm gonna say, okay, well, the night before, I'm gonna ask myself these questions. I'm gonna rehearse it a little bit. The morning of, I'm gonna breathe. I'm gonna close my eyes. I'm gonna visualize it going just fine. Everything's gonna be fine. If they say this, I'll say that. In other words, I'm gonna role play it in my mind over and over and over again during the day. And then afterwards, oh, how would I follow up with them to make them feel good? How would I follow up? Or what would be my next right steps after that, right? I have a friend right now who's just an unbelievable professional rock climber, right? And this person was gonna go climb one of the hardest climbs in the world. And I said, man, that would terrify me because I hate heights. How did you prepare for that? He says, oh, well, my regular routine is like this. I said, yeah, but what do you do the day before? And he had like 5 or 6 things he did the day before to get himself mentally and emotionally and physically ready, including doing a lot of mobility training, a lot of breathing and calming activities, a lot of visualization, going over his notes about where each hold was. It was unbelievable. The day of, that morning, he got up, he went through a very basic routine. He'd been running for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, but he added on other little elements too that he knew he was gonna do in advance, including calling his spouse and saying, I love you, honey, because he's about to climb up a mountain. And then the day after, because here's what we often don't think. Stress has a longer shelf life than we think. What I mean by that is, let's say you go do something and it's really stressful, that energy carries with you the next day. So what can you do the next day to calm yourself down? For example, many of you guys have been to my seminars before out in the world, right? Maybe you come to High Performance Academy or HPX or Influencer or one of our big programs. And I know that delivering that training, it takes 4 days of my life. I'm on stage for anywhere between 7 to 14 hours a day, depending on the event, and standing up that whole time. Delivering that seminar is one of the hardest things I do in the world. Well, guess what? I gotta plan my stress management after it. Because after it, my adrenals are all blown out, I'm exhausted, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to recover from this. So I plan my recovery well in advance of that situation. So what can you do before, during, and after to put yourself in a good place so that you can really deal with the stress? Number 3, I do need you to visualize and role model over and over and over again. Now, I know I referenced this a little bit when I talked about what to do during the stressful situation or the day of. I think it's incredibly important that if you know you have something stressful coming up, that you visualize it over and over and over again, that you play it in your mind over and over and over again. But here's a difference, okay? Fear-mongering or worrying is thinking about it and seeing it go bad every single time. Visualizing is seeing you show up confident, capable, doing a good job. Confident, capable, doing a good job. I want you to, every single time, visualization should be a positive thinking exercise where you're seeing the situation and you're seeing yourself handle it well, but you're also noticing the things that are difficult. What if they say this, or what if they say that? And you're kind of like scenario planning. If she says this, then I'll say that. If he does this, then I'll do that. But keep the momentum going and visualize the thing all the way through. Right? My friend, the rock climber, he doesn't just visualize, the start of the climb. He visualizes the entire climb until he's standing on top of the rock and there's success. So I want you to visualize the entire scenario. What most people do is they visualize a little bit of the scenario, they feel anxiousness and worry, so they stop visualizing, or they catastrophize. They start seeing it going bad, and they never walk the entire thing through. Right? I want you to walk the entire thing through, see the entire thing, and force yourself to see it going well. Force yourself to see it going well. Force yourself to see it going well. Then I want you to pair it with role modeling. I want you to call up a friend, call up somebody else say, hey, I'm about to have this conversation, or I'm about to go do this thing. Can I ask you some questions and try this out? Sound it out, act it out, explore it with other people. There's very few things I do in my life that I haven't already talked with somebody through, right? Before my meetings, before my conversations, before a lot of my online courses, I'll sit down and I'll literally try out the words on people. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I'll get feedback from them, and that makes me think more deeply about it. And when I think more deeply about it, suddenly the stress isn't so front of house, because in my mind, I'm already prepared. Preparation can get rid of a lot of stress. But role modeling puts you in that actual environment where you're doing the thing. Then when you show up, you're like, wow, my mind has seen this 1,000 times. I've already talked it and acted out. Let's go. And now it's not so stressful. Fourth big idea, enroll your friends. If you got something coming up, like your SATs, your ACTs, a test, create study groups. Don't go it alone. Create a study group of some friends where you guys create a regular schedule where you're studying and you're getting ready together. Right? That camaraderie of things. Same thing, if you're gonna go run a marathon, it's gonna be this big scary thing. It's your first marathon ever. If you've been running with a group of people, they know by science that no doubt you will perform better and less anxiously because you've prepared with other people. Almost everything you do in your life, you should think, how do I enroll friends or find peers to do this with them so I stay on the journey? When you have friends or others involved, we know from social sciences that you're more likely to stay committed, stay consistent, and succeed. But guess what? We're in a society of selfies where we only think of ourselves, and we only, because we're scared to ask for help or be vulnerable and say, I don't know, we do everything ourselves. And everything I ever do, I literally sit down, here's my goal list. Anytime I write down goals, I don't just write down, when's it gonna happen? What's my next step? What's the deadline? Instead, I also write next to it and I say, who can I enroll with me on this goal? Get people enrolled with you in your goals, get people enrolled with you so you can role play with them, ask, participate, go through it with them. It's not so scary. I know you know this if you've ever been to the county fair. I'm from Montana, so we always had the county fair, and there would be these big, huge, scary rides when I was a kid. I never went on a ride by myself as a kid. Never once. I'd go grab my buddy, I'd like, hey, you're coming on with me. And he'd go, what are you kidding? I'm not gonna. He didn't wanna go, I didn't wanna go. But when we said, let's go together, we got on that zipper, we got flipped around and kicked around, and we loved it. And we only did it because we did it together. You will face greater stresses and greater fears when you go at it together. I hope this serves you, my friend. I wanna thank you again for being part of our HPX community. I love having you guys here. HPX stands for the High Performance Experience. It just means, there's another level of life experience available to you when you prepare, when you think things through, when you challenge yourself to be your absolute best, when you show up each and every day and you say, I'm gonna be vibrant today, I'm gonna be connected with other people, I'm gonna make a difference, and I know that's why you're here, so thank you for being here. Make sure you subscribe, share this video with somebody going through a stressful situation today. I'll see you next time. This can be your day for personal growth. This can be that day you committed to and you remember and you go, That was the day I got myself a community. I got better coaches. I committed to making my life the absolute best that I could. This is that day. Make today your growth day. Click the button on this page and sign up right now.